Good morning, evening, noon or night. SteelOfIron here when you let's play. Oh, it's not let's play. Welcome to my 2012 Halloween special. Happy Halloween. I'm going to be doing a narration of the story of Lost Silver. You'll be seeing the gameplay in the background. Hopefully, how to say this? Together. Not together. In time with what I'm reading. Hopefully it works out, and hopefully you enjoy it. So without further ado, let's begin. You see, I am a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver here in the States. I have purposely locked myself out of all media and internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no /v/, no Bulbapedia, etc. As I was busy with school that year, and being poor at the same time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago my mum threw it away because I told her the save went dead. And I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it was the only Pokemon game left that they have for the Game Boy Color. $10. Fairly cheap. I went home and started up for a nostalgic trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre. And most likely why you're watching / reading this. Depends what you're doing really. Anyway, the Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the cartridge was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over, and all the other buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished, and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual main menu screen, it was already in the game, in a previous save file. Which was odd, as I was expecting all these cartridges to have been wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy or girl did anyway. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile, and apparently he had 999 hours and 99 minutes put into the game, with all 16 badges, 99,999.9 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon in the Pokédex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. So I checked his Pokemon to see what badass team he has. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns, and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this is some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyways. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but identified the word spelled out to be L-E-A-V-E, leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before they had individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left, with only 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time, I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that, despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries, just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appeared to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason, there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if just leaning on its side. There was no music at all. There was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but can't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There weren't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black, music finally started. I had a sudden chill, as I recognised that melody I heard to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the Alpha Ruins where the Unknown are at. I immediately realised that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room. I would need flash. Before I took care of that, though, I immediately checked my pocket gear to change the radio to something more pleasant. And it turns out that there was no radio card, or even a phone or a time card. There was only a map in which gold was just walking in the midst of black. I recall that Cyndaquil had flash, so I turned off my pocket gear and made Cyndaquil use flash. I didn't see any message saying hurry use flash or anything like that. The room was just lit, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear grey path heading south. The ladder I used to go up or down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made, until I finally made it to the end. There was a sign there. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I did not know what it was asking. The screen went black again, making a louder climbing sound. The Unknown radio stopped, and in a few seconds was replaced with the not as creepy Poker Flute radio music. As the music started, a message appeared. It said Hurry had fainted, which was odd since I recall there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly, and he was no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon were there, but instead all replaced with level 10 Unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the Unknown. My team of Unknown spelled H-E-D-I-E-D. He died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were grey bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside the room appears to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, and only to find out that the sprite of gold was missing his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but rather more sad and empty in a way I do not know how to describe. For some reason, it also now said that he has 24 badges, which was clearly impossible in that generation. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun downwards slowly, as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of gold is coloured differently now. Instead of the usual red colour, he appeared completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he came straight from the colourless Game Boy games, placed into a coloured background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now, he was as white as the overworld sprite. He lost his legs, and what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says he has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me as this change of numbers seems to represent something. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 Unknown and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The Unknown are this time level 15, and spelled out D-Y-I-N-G. Dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except with only half the sprites. One leg, one arm, one eye. It only has one attack. Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower, with the immobile pillar as before, except everything was apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long, slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white. And nothing happened when I tried to speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appears, chopped off, with the transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged in battle. Music starts. It sounds like the unknown radio music again, but played backwards this time. Gold's battle sprite matches his front one, with the bloody eyes, white skin, and lack of arms, while Red sprite was the same as before in Gold Silver Crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name, and both of us only have one Pokemon each. Which is weird, as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently, with half a sprite. The shiny noise and animation was different, as the sound it made was like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he is level 255. And his sprite seems sad and has tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight item Pokemon run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi only has one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was somehow level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his attack and defense. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could even learn Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd. Not like I have a choice. At this point, I didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there was no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens, as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effect of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except, in the text it said, "Celebi has died." And instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, Celebi's back sprite just vanished. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards it said Pikachu has died, with a slow fade out animation. Apparently I was the winner, as the transparent red sprite showed up and said, ... At that point, I just freaked out, as the transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point, and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to Gold Sprite. He is now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite was. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time, the only thing remaining of him was his head. With transparent skin, the head was zoomed in a bit, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he has 40 badges. I went back and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknowns, which then spelled out NOMORE. No more. I was at what I know now is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I felt like something was there that could still be heard. I was back in my room in Newbark Town. Maybe finally I get to play this game properly. Pfft, who was I kidding? I knew that sadistic fuck must have done something. I walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go downstairs to see what's waiting down there for me. Note, I said walking, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all, just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go downstairs. I ended up in the same lower level of my house. Everything appears normal except Mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work. Instead, I just walked straight through. I continued moving south to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy, as when I entered the void, the outline of Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area, and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south, without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said, "Goodbye, forever," and vanished. As it happened, it said, question mark, used nightmare. Which at this point, I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back in the small, hollowed out room surrounded by graves from earlier. Or at least, I say I was back there. There was no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around. Nothing moved. Not even wall bumping noises. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no Gold sprite left. It said I have 0 badges and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced by skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which are all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase I dared to read. I M D E A D. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was then covered with the same blocks as the wall. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text said R.I.P. Rest in peace. That room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold has already been dead. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempt at becoming a Pokemon Master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death. and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from the text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened, at which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generations have folk tales and legends, but the second generation has shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that hell of a game has told me. This has been SteelOfIron, signing out. Have a happy Halloween and stay safe and away from fireworks. Good night.